Kathleen, come on up. Kathleen, I couldn't even describe Kathleen. She's absolutely amazing.
That's scary.
I am. But the place I want to start, one of the things that you do is, and I was going to make this the second part of our conversation, but there's an interesting segue that I should have brought up, which is you work a lot with athletes and celebrities to help shape their humanitarian commitment and their work in response to disasters. Mm-hmm. And Aisha made a very interesting point that human beings are more likely to respond to certainly a peer or someone in their community, or even a virtual person in their community, an avatar, than they are to respond to a celebrity in the context of a serious issue. I think the argument behind that is the credibility of somebody who
of their intent.
Well, sure, but one of the top environmental advocates is Leonardo DiCaprio, but he doesn't really want for anything when he makes $15-20 million a film, so the sacrifices that I have to make as an individual are not likely to be the same ones. So if he wants to build a house out of bamboo or drive a hybrid, that's much easier for him than it would be for me. That's obviously a challenge when you're working with people who have significant awareness built in and significant celebrity built into their day jobs. What does it take for the commitment by a celebrity to be genuine so that we can tell the difference between someone who's actually having an impact and someone who's just there for show?
Shaquille O'Neal, I launched Shaq on Twitter, and it was an easy marriage. It was right. It worked because of who he was and how he approaches things. And I remember the first time that he said on Twitter, very soon after he started, I'm going to be in X city, and I'm going to be with a charity that dealt with children in hunger. He said, we're going to collect 10,000 peanut butter jars for charity tonight and send it to Africa. Well, it was a natural thing. He had already been associated with that organization. He was going to that city because he had a game there that night, so that it wasn't contrived in any way. And the flood of people saying, I'm so inspired, where can I donate, was amazing to me. And I kept going back to the charity and saying, you need to be aware of this, be prepared, because this, that, and the other thing's happening. So I think that in terms of genuine, there's got to be a continuity. It can't be a one-off, because the one-offs are too easy. And it needs to have some kind of organic connection to them.
Both of the examples that you gave, and I think the majority of the examples where an athlete or a celebrity is involved, ultimately is focused on fundraising. Mm-hmm. It's focused on maybe the collection of some kind of goods or similar. Primarily short-term, moderate to low impact type of things. Good for awareness, not so good for sustained involvement, not so good for demonstrable change and things like that. Is there a limit to the impact that celebrity can have on the sort of spectrum of engagement in terms of awareness and then obviously education and deep knowledge and understanding of how to respond to a crisis, et cetera, or
more than I ever imagined?
Celebrities well.
Well, I think both, but more than I ever imagined. My sports media challenge business works with sports and celebrity. My BuzzMgr business monitors social media and does strategy and execution. And I was involved in something called Exercise 24, which was a disaster preparedness exercise through San Diego State University's Viz Lab. It was 79 countries involved, and we created the social media strategy, and we monitored it all and learned a whole lot. From there, I went to Darden School for a supply chain management program on disaster relief, and I was amazed at the politics involved. And everybody was asked, what is the biggest clog in the system? And one of the things they said was celebrities, because when the celebrities get involved, everything stops. The politics is stop whatever you're doing, help them. We have to do that. And I started thinking, oh my God, those who really care and really are doing it because they want to make a difference have no idea the problems they're creating doing this. So we have to find new ways to use them so that they can truly be human being who cares and uses what resources they have to make a difference, short term and long term. And that means making huge changes in the way they're used right now. One of the things that I came up with at the Darden School, one of the ideas that we talked about was creating a social game, because people learn very well, in fun ways, to teach people how to respond in disaster. Teach them if they see on CNN a story about all these pets in Haiti who now have nowhere to go and no food and so on, and they send 100,000 dog booties as a result of it, what that does to clog the system. And in a game, we could actually create systems. So you see this, you want to do this, you do this, then what are the ramifications of you doing this? And give them an option to take another choice and do something that would be productive to actually achieve their goal. Well, one of the things with celebrities that I thought of is, well, instead of them clogging up the system, if we got them to be the characters in the game, the voices in the game, and to promote the games, they could do what they wanted to do in terms of create real, significant, sustainable change, and do it in a way that was going to be productive instead of counterproductive.
But so part of that challenge seems to me that we're missing all the really basic stuff, right? The idea that sending 100,000 dog booties to Haiti, to anyone who pauses for 1 second to think about that, and it's not that absurd an example, actually. There are almost apocryphal stories in every major disaster over the last decade or two.
Suzanne Sommer thigh masters sent to Haiti, swear to God. Absolutely remarkable. Down jackets sent to Indonesia. Somebody just wanted to get them off their books and get a donation, and they sent them in clogs of the system. And 90% of it's lost, it's buried, it's thrown away because it's counterproductive.
So what are the basic things that in the X24 study that you put together and in your work on the social and the buzz side of things, what are the basic things that we know work and that, not to misuse the word, but can sort of be exploited for to create a more significant constructive response to a humanitarian crisis? And what are the basic things that we're overlooking, that we're just not even getting right, beyond I would make the argument we should just stop collecting donations, for example, because there are more constructive ways to use individual time than convincing them that a donation has solved a certain need or not. But
the politics, I will be blunt, I was appalled at the politics in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. I was just blown away. I'm like, but aren't we trying to do this? So why would this NGO not want an automated system like BuzzMgr that would aggregate all the tweets and the Facebook and so on to be able to respond better? Well, we have people all over the world that are collecting this, and are you doing this with every disaster and X, Y, and Z? I'm like, all I'm trying to do is give you a tool to make it more efficient. One of the things that I found was that we need to educate people. I say all the time, experience does not equate to expertise. Just because you tweet or you're on Facebook or you're on LinkedIn or you're doing YouTube doesn't mean that you're doing it well. And I found that a lot of the governmental bodies and the NGOs in the exercise were actually sending out information, using it only as a broadcast mechanism, not as a communication mechanism, when they were listening to what people on the other side were telling them, and they weren't listening much, broadly, deeply, consistently. They were not saying, I hear you, to at least give a sense of, we're coming, we understand it. I think there needs to be many, many changes in the way the listening occurs, and make sure that it's more comprehensive and that there's a priority inbox that tells you when to respond and who should be responding, and it should be directed and so on. I also think we need to look at the language of social media in disaster. Somebody said to me, if you're sending out a tweet and it's only 140 characters, you can't say too much. So we should ask people, what do you see? And I said, but wait a minute. There are people who are not visual, but they're more auditory. And there are things that are happening that require smell more than what you see. So I think there needs to be a great deal of study in the language of how to use social media to elicit the kind of information you need to respond more effectively. I also think we have to move the people in charge away to a very different cultural focus, so that trust obviously is a big issue. Many of them, I understand, have been doing the same things for many years. Now, I'm a neophyte in this area. I will be the first to say this. But they know when they get a piece of information from X entity on this piece of paper in this format that they can trust it. And so they factor that into their decision making. They don't have a clue what to do when they see a tweet or something on Facebook or a YouTube video, so they don't factor it into their decision making and don't respond effectively to it. So we need to teach the people who are responding, really, really best practices in terms of social media. We need to change the language that we use, and we need to teach the public how to communicate most effectively to get the kind of help that they're looking for as well. So there's a massive educational campaign that I think is critically in need right now.
So one last quick question. I agree with you that we need to essentially re-educate and almost reorganize the way the organizations operate in response to a disaster. You work with media organizations, you work with corporations, you work with humanitarian and nonprofit organizations, you work with sports entities, all of which are good at presumably something. Is there presumably, is there a segment of an organization or an example from within a league or within an organization that you think does demonstrate what's possible? The reason I ask that is I do a lot of crisis response, and people always say, what's the best way to respond to a crisis? And the example I always give is David Stern. When the NBA referee crisis broke out a couple years ago, David Stern stood up the next day and did possibly the longest press conference anyone had ever done. It was like 2.5 hours long. He said, I will stand here and answer every question you have, but I will not answer a question after today. So come here and ask them now. And he did, and he answered them all, and he answered them as truthfully and openly as a lawyer who happens to be the head of a major billion-dollar league would do. And the issue went away. It was still there. It tainted the league, but it was not a continual conversation and scandal. No one ever looks at David Stern, the head of the NBA, as a model for Toyota or Crayola or anyone who gets into some kind of trouble in a different environment. But since you've worked in all these other environments, quickly, what would be one or two that you might pull from that the humanitarian response effort could study as a starting point?
Well, I will go with the NBA because they seem to be more progressive in many ways. And you look at Mutombo and what he is doing in Africa, and they are a very global organization, unlike other sports leagues. And so they are doing it to spread their league. I'm not saying it's all altruistic by any means, but they years ago had 60 people on the ground in China, because they were spreading the NBA to China. So they're at least open to different cultures and the ways of thinking, and they have feet on the ground. They now have an African initiative. I'm very focused on Africa because my daughter has an NGO in Africa, and so I'm watching everything in that area. I think they've made major progress. I don't think the NFL, they try, but frankly, they are, from what I understand, they are actually putting the carrot in front of their players and saying, all right, we want to take some people to X country this summer to make an impact, and the players don't care that much, and it's just a good PR move. So golf is an international place. They give tremendous amount to charity, the PGA, each year. The RNA governs golf all over the world outside of the United States. I think they have huge upside and potential to do this. I don't think that they've done it yet. So I think there's a long way to go, which means there's a lot that all of us in this room can do to educate them and get them on board.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.